advising clients across the country. Here he is, your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
Welcome back to Something More with Chris Boyd. My name is Jeff Perry. I'm sitting in the big seat this week for Chris Boyd. And for this next part, this episode, I'm very happy to have with us one of our certified financial planners at Asset Management Resources, Jeff Tomaning. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me.
You're a frequent guest on our episodes here, and we always have a good conversation. For this episode, I wanted to talk about, I don't usually like talking about regrets. You know, we all try to live a life without regrets, right? But I saw this article on MarketWatch earlier this month, and the title of it got me to read it. And although the subject seemed pretty straightforward, I think a more detailed conversation might get people thinking about them. And obviously, if you think about things, you plan, you have a good solid financial plan, there are many times that many of these regrets that are mentioned in the article of people having these regrets, I mean, the goal is to avoid them. So let's get going. The first regret that most people reported in the article is not planning for long-term care expenses. So long-term care expenses, if people aren't familiar with the term, it's when you get older or you have some type of injury or illness and you need some type of care. That care could be at home, having some assistance, nursing, home health aides into the house, or it could be an assisted living. Maybe you feel like you or a loved one needs some additional care, maybe around the clock care, maybe not skilled nursing, but that's assisted living. And then there is those who find at the end of their life need some ongoing nursing care. So all these categories, if you will, fit into long-term care, and they all have something in common, and that's they're very expensive. Right. And Jeff, I guess we should start with that. I guess people probably don't even want to talk about these things sometimes, or, thinking about how you're going to spend the years near the end of your life, perhaps not at home, perhaps needing some extra care, isn't something that many people want to really embrace, never mind plan for.
Yeah, I believe that the issue is people are living longer,
right?
But they're not necessarily living healthier. So maybe the person who was, 68 years old 40 years ago is equivalent to the person who's 88 years old now. So in the end, the way I look at it, and just from my experience, is, people are living longer. You have medical advances that allow people to live longer. But once you get to the point where you lose that healthiness, I should say, right, you're going to need something. And a lot of people come to us and they talk about, okay, well, I can't afford the insurance, or I don't know about insurance. What I tell them is it's important to have that plan. And once they have the plan, then we can go from there, because then it becomes, all right, well, how do we fund that plan? Do you do it with insurance? Do you do it with your investment portfolio? Do you do it with income? But I think, like a lot of our conversations, it comes down to having a plan. And that plan doesn't just have to do with the funding. It could be, who are the people that are going to take care of you? We hear the regrets of, I really wish my daughter didn't have to take care of me, or my son didn't have to take care of me.
Yep.
And as much as we don't want to scare people into planning for it when they are younger and healthier, I think it's important to have those conversations, not just as a financial professional, but whether you're a child or a younger relative, someone older, trying to bring that up. It's a difficult conversation, certainly.
That's a good point. And when you're talking about a plan, we're talking about a comprehensive financial plan that we think everyone should have. And I think one of the most meaningful part in that planning process is when I think it's at our second meeting with a prospective client or at an annual review of a client, and we're looking at the likelihood of success of the plan in place and how we can change it. But I think one of the most interesting things is when we do what I call, I think other planners call it as well, stress testing the plan and saying, okay, here's your plan. If your plan is to live here, your plan is to take this much income, these are your assets, and you look good, but then you put some event in it, you put some crisis in it, you put some, for this part of the conversation, you put a long-term care event, meaning you need this extra care and you need this extra cost. And putting insurance aside for a second, if this happens and you have to spend $300,000, for example, over a 3-year period, which is a number that happens, how is your plan impacted? And I think that part of the financial planning process can be very, not only insightful, but can be somewhat motivating for people to actually objectively reflect on the possibility that this could happen, and what if this happens, what are we going to do?
Yeah, one of the things in the article you brought up, according to the U.S. Administration on Aging, there's 3 years of care on average,
Right.
and someone turning age 65 today has almost a 70% chance of needing some type of long-term care. And if the number is 70%, why wouldn't you plan for it?
Right.
I mean, we do a lot of planning in general, not just as advisors, but I think consumers in general plan for a lot of things that have less than 70% chance of happening.
That's a good point. Right.
Objectively, it just makes sense to do it.
So you touched on them, and I don't want to spend too much time because we have 3 others that we want to talk about as well. But it's just simple, and things aren't really always as simple, but you can consider a long-term care insurance policy. There's pros and cons of that. You can plan to and acquire assets that are sizable enough that can handle this, that can handle a stress test of your plan. Or you're going to have to find out some other solution or put your financial plan in some type of jeopardy should you have one of these events. So this is a perfect time, not to give a plug, but to say, if you don't have a financial plan, you should have a financial plan. And if you have one and you'd like to get some second opinion on your plan and maybe stress test it, that's something that we do at Asset Management Resources. If you're not a client or not familiar with us, you can check us out at amrfinancial.com. If you'd prefer to give us a call, it's 508-771-8900. We'd be happy to talk to you about it. But it's important that you work with somebody that you trust, someone that has your best interest at heart, and that you have a plan, so it's not just a hope that these things don't happen and figure it out later. You're really doing yourself and your loved ones a disservice by not having some strategy, some plan for these things that, as you say, 70% are likelihood that you're going to need some type of long-term care if you live to the age that we all want to live, whatever that might be for you. The second one in the article talks about regrets, and this one is going to happen. This is not a 70% chance. This is a 100% chance that there's going to be inflation over your lifetime, over the decades that you hope to live in retirement. And as simple as that sounds, I'm surprised by the number of people that I talk to that, map out a rudimentary financial plan about, okay, I'm going to turn 65. What's my pension? What's my Social Security? How much assets do I have? What can I take for withdrawals? Okay, I have enough to cover it. Period. Yeah, you have enough to cover it when you're 65, 66, but have you factored in that on average, and this is a a big debate, especially this last year, about what you should use for an inflation number, but it's going to be something, and you can, you can
It's
assume
not going to be zero.
it's not going to be zero. And if it was this past year and you didn't have inflation adjusted in your plan, it's been a tough year.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit. How do you view inflation in the context of helping someone develop a financial plan so they don't have a regret about it?
Well, again, it goes down to experience.
Right.
You know, when you've done it and paid attention to it for 25 plus years, like I see it. I mean, costs are much different now than they were 25 years ago. For instance, you know, I remember sitting with a client in the mid 90s who wanted to send their kid to college in 18 years. It was an infant, and they couldn't believe that the cost of in-state tuition, and I was working in North Carolina at the time, was going to be $18,000 a year.
Your projection,
for 17, right? Something
right.
like that.
Yep.
And they're like, "Oh, you're crazy. That's not going to happen." And you know, it was at that number in a fraction of the time. But you know, I think another issue I see with some investors or some clients is they think, well, I'll just work a little bit into retirement. And I think that can be helpful, but you also get to the point where you can't work anymore.
Right.
So I think it's important to plan for that. You physically or maybe mentally can't get there, not to mention the emotional side of things. I think one thing we might get to a little later is like people just get stressed about dealing with money and inflation. But yeah, I think in our planning process that you were talking about earlier, we talk about, you know, possible declines in investments, medical expenses coming up, major home expenses if you're going to stay in a place, and just costs in general. So we just want to make sure that we bring that up in our conversation.
Absolutely. You know, you think about it, long-term inflation effects of your portfolio and your ability to meet your desired living standard, and you're talking about college expenses. I think about it in the context inflation about purchasing a new vehicle. So if you right, so if you know, because that's part of our plan, we ask our clients, all right, how often do you plan to purchase a new vehicle? What is about the cost in today's dollars? And we add inflation to that for the future. So, you know, people say, yeah, I'm going to buy a new car every 6-8 years, whatever they say. Some more frequently, some less. Whatever they say, we put into the financial plan and we talk about it. So, you know, we use today's dollars. So very commonly, someone will say, well, maybe I'll spend $40,000 every 6 years, say, whatever it is. But if you think about the future in 20 years, when you're buying that car, if you're 65 now and you're buying your last car, everybody says that, buying my last car, at say 85.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's so, what's that car going to cost? Go back 20 years. Go back to 2003. How much was a new car? How much was it that model? It's more than doubled. So you certainly have to reflect on how inflation is going to impact you. And if you're trying to get your head around, go back into our past. If you can't predict the future, go back and see how much things cost, how much insurance cost, how much homes cost, rent costs, cars cost, whatever it is, cost of college cost. In the number of years you expect to live, go backwards, and it will be very insightful that inflation does happen, even if it's slow and steady, unlike the last year. Jeff, the next thing that people in retirement said that they regret was that they weren't continuing to manage their investments. And you can take that a couple ways. For the sake of this limited time that we have, I want to focus in on people who, you know, have decades to live into their retirement, but make the mistake of de-risking too much, meaning I'm retired, I'm going to put all my money in something safe. I don't want to have to worry about anything anymore. And so safety has its virtues, but sometimes if you go too safe in your overall portfolio, you cannot get the growth perhaps that you need over the long term to keep up with inflation. What do you think about
Yeah,
that?
understood. I totally agree. I think one of the issues it comes from behavioral finance and just fear. And I think that's where financial advisors and planners can help their clients the most, is around behavioral decisions around their investments. And sometimes it means staying the course. Sometimes it means, whoa, you're 70 years old and you're 80% risk in your portfolio.
Right.
That's a bit high. It's a lot high. But I think it's important to have someone who can be objective and show you the numbers, one, and then two, be understanding of the emotional aspects around money. But I think it's really important to have that unbiased third party. I think it also comes into play as people age with cognitive decline.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of a client that managed it was a husband and wife, and the husband managed his investments for a number of years, for basically all of their marriage, and he's got Parkinson's now, and he's having a hard time letting go. Unfortunately, in this case, the illness is causing them as a couple to let go of the financial decision making.
But it's a sad story, and it's a not uncommon story. But if you have that relationship with and someone you trust as a financial advisor, that you've had this relationship with a long time, and your family knows who this person is, meaning the financial advisor, that process of someone being able to assist a family member or to step in and take maybe more active role and work with the financial planner who's already up to speed with everything, makes it a lot easier than dealing with a crisis situation, if you will. It can turn a difficult situation into a little bit less stressful, and that actually just goes right into the last one in the article about having regrets, is not being prepared for surprises. And in illness, even though when you're getting older, and we all should anticipate that we could have a health issue, especially the older we get, the illness can fall into that category of something's happened, whether it be physical or cognitive or whatever, that you don't have the ability to handle your life the way that you did. And that could be a surprise. It could be a surprise that your house needs a new roof and you didn't budget for it. It could be your surprise. It could be a whole host of things. They call them surprises because for a reason. But to me, this gets at the need to have liquidity. Sometimes we call it an emergency fund, but to have some level of cash on hand that is available to you in those times of surprises and crisis and need, that if you don't have that emergency fund in place or liquidity in your investments that you can get at, you can have to make decisions that aren't necessary in your long-term best interests.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean, yes, the more you save, obviously that's going to put you in a better position. I know the author is talking about, I don't know if I'd call them last resort methods, but they're, taking out a reverse mortgage,
right.
Trying to delay your retirement, taking on part-time work, which, can be helpful, financially, but there are also, I think, social and cognitive benefits from doing something like that. So there are a number of challenges that can come up, and obviously you have to plan for them. Sometimes it means taking drastic measures like trying to make yourself, how should I say, trying to gift assets away, trying to do things like that. I mean, but the issue there is, if you need to be able to plan to do something like that. You can't just do it at the end.
Right. And people sometimes put those legacy problems, legacy planning or estate planning in different categories outside of financial planning. But for the clients that we work with, that's just a part of the financial plan. We discuss those issues and we help you craft it. Certainly you're going to use an attorney, an experienced estate planning attorney, and we can refer you to one or give you names, but or we review the plan that you have to make sure it's adequate for these challenges, surprises, all these things that happen. By spending, it's like anything in life. By spending time and intention and dedication to a specific purpose, financial planning, estate planning, all these things, not only will you be more prepared and more likely to live your financial dreams and goals, you'll be ready for these things when they happen, because some of these things are going to happen. You're certainly going to pass away, and you have to plan for that. You may need long-term care. You may have some unusual expense. All these regrets that people who are mentioned in this article, most of these can be avoided or at least planned for. And so if we can help you with any of those things, and or you would like a second opinion on your plan, reach out to us at amrfinancial.com or give us a call at 508-771-8900. Jeff, thanks for sitting in with us for this episode. It's always good to talk to you and hear your decades of experience and insight. We appreciate your time, and we'll have you on for another topic very soon.
Thank you, Jeff. It's great to be here. Appreciate it.
You're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd, Financial Talk Show.
Asset Management Resources, LLC, and J. Christopher Boyd, CFP, provide investment advice on an individual basis to clients only. Proper advice depends on a complete analysis of all facts and circumstances. The information given on this program is in the nature of general financial comments and cannot be relied upon as pertaining to your specific situation. AMR, LLC cannot guarantee that using the information from this show will generate profits or ensure freedom from loss. Listeners should consult their own financial advisors or conduct their own due diligence before making any financial decisions.